There are some things that stand the test of time, while others, well, they age about as well as milk. Like, remember when Marvel Studios was slammed for casting no-name actors Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston for the first Thor movie? Yeah, who's even heard of those guys? Fans tend to bring a lot of preconceived notions to the theater with them, which is why so many casting calls have been really controversial at first. Let's take a look at some of the most iconic superhero movie roles which fans were surprisingly skeptical about at first. It seems like the more popular a character, the more people freak out about which actor will be playing the part. The Joker is Batman's most well-known nemesis, and prior to The Dark Knight, he had been played by legendary actor Jack Nicholson in Tim Burton's Batman, and voiced by Mark Hamill in Batman the Animated Series. Needless to say, the bar was set pretty high when Heath Ledger was cast as the Clown Prince of Crime, and many fans weren't happy about it. They cited Ledger's roles in movies like 10 Things I Hate About You and A Knight's Tale as proof that there was no way he could pull off the Joker. And we all know he was just coasting on Brokeback Mountain fame. Heath Ledger's Joker was a massive success, and it did much more than win him a bunch of accolades and an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. To many fans, his Joker is the Joker, or at least a metric to judge all other actors who dare to put on the clown paint. And let's just say it's a bar very few actors are capable of clearing. Just like there have been multiple Jokers over the years, we've also seen many versions of Spider-Man come and go. Sometimes we even seen a ton of them all on screen at the same time. We know it's hard to remember all the way back to 2002. A dark period of time when superhero movies weren't the major box office cash grab that they are today. Thankfully, Spider-Man swung in to save us from that sad, sad fate. First, we had Tobey Maguire and then Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, so when we found out the series was being done again, a lot of fans felt some serious superhero fatigue. Not only had Spider-Man been done multiple times, but there are so many cool versions of the character. Many fans were disappointed we were getting yet another white male Peter Parker when Tom Holland was cast. Why not Miles Morales or a Gwen Stacy? But then Captain America Civil War came out and we got to see Holland as Underoos for the first time. Even Marvel Comics legend Stan Lee loved Holland as Peter Parker, and fans agreed. In fact, when it looked like the MCU would lose Holland, everyone immediately panicked and lost their collective minds over it. It's like we all suddenly forgot that a few years earlier we had been rolling our eyes over this casting call. Batman is another beloved comic book character that fans had strong feelings about. So when Ben Affleck was cast as him in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, people were not thrilled to say the least. Meanwhile, Affleck was absolutely picked apart as fans criticized everything from his body to his Boston accent. And really, the deck was stacked against him from the get-go. The DC movies he was in were less than great, and opinions on his version of The Dark Knight vary. But most people at the very least admit he wasn't as bad as they were expecting. In fact, now that Robert Pattinson has been cast as Batman, suddenly everyone's suspiciously sad about Affleck stepping down. Fans working themselves into a tizzy over superheroes is nothing new. But even the studio was upset over Robert Downey Jr. being cast as Iron Man. He had once had a very successful acting career, until it was totally derailed due to his substance abuse issues. After numerous arrests and many failures to show up on set, even insurance companies wouldn't cover him anymore, which made it even more difficult to find work. The only reason he was able to start his career back up at all was because Mel Gibson personally paid his insurance bond for the movie The Singing Detective. Although he was clean, Hollywood still considered him a huge risk, and nobody wanted to see him as Tony Stark in Iron Man. Well, except for one person, director Jon Favreau. Favreau was so confident that Downey was the man for the job, he pretty much refused to consider anybody else. After a lot of debate, the studio gave in, and Robert Downey Jr. had no small part in making the MCU the cinematic behemoth it is today. While the X-Men movie isn't part of the MCU, many people credit it with helping kick off the craze of superhero movies. And of course, they needed someone to play everyone's favorite hot-headed hero, Wolverine. It's not that people were really angry about Hugh Jackman being cast, but few people were really familiar with him at the time. He wasn't widely known outside of Australia, and many people were unsure about trusting an unknown actor to pull off a character like Wolverine. Even Jackman was worried about being able to pack an emotional punch into such few lines, so he studied Clint Eastwood in the Dirty Harry movies. and Mel Gibson in Mad Max 2. Now, of course, Hugh Jackman is a big-name actor, and it's easy to forget that fans were once skeptical this mystery man could pull off playing an iconic comic book character. Sometimes fans criticize new stars because of their acting ability or film history, but there was definitely a lot of low blows when Gal Gadot was cast as Wonder Woman. A particularly vocal segment of fans couldn't get over someone slender like Gadot playing an Amazonian warrior. You know, because no male actors had ever had to bulk up for a role. It's not like women can just exercise and gain muscles. That's just crazy talk. It's almost as crazy as the fact that Gadot underwent an intense training regimen and piled on 17 pounds of muscle for the role. Sheer madness. Luckily, producer Charles Roven wasn't fazed by the backlash, correctly pointing out that people also flipped out over Heath Ledger as the Joker and Ben Affleck as Batman. Apparently, an important part of being involved in superhero movies is learning how to tune out legions of furious fans. People were also skeptical of her limited film experience, which is kind of a crazy complaint if you think about it. Are these the same people looking for 5 years of experience for an entry-level job? But fans aren't the only ones who consider a star's resume, or lack thereof. Chris Evans didn't even make the original list of potential Captain Americas because of his time as the Human Torch in the Fantastic Four movies. But according to Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige, they had considerable trouble casting the role. John Krasinski even admits he was too intimidated by Chris Hemsworth as Thor to move forward with the audition process. And even Evans turned down the role when it was first offered. Twice! Apparently, the third time was the charm after Robert Downey Jr. and his other celeb friends talked him into accepting the part. Many fans were skeptical that Evan could take on the role of Captain America and do it justice. But considering the fact that Chris Evans also thought he wasn't right for the role, at least those skeptical fans were in good company, even if they turned out to be terribly, terribly wrong. Now, Evan admits that if he had turned down the part a fourth time, it would have been the biggest regret of his life. Being responsible for bringing a beloved comic book character to the big screen can be a lot to deal with. But actor Mark Ruffalo definitely had an extra heaping helping of things to worry about when he was cast as Bruce Banner in the Avengers. Not only was he playing the iconic Bruce Banner, but he was taking over the role from Edward Norton, who played him in The Incredible Hulk. Once he got the part, Ruffalo made the classic mistake of checking in to see what the internet thought about it. A mistake that he says he will never repeat. He calls the backlash about his casting brutal, but says he was determined to overcome it. To make matters worse, Tom Hiddleston had apparently talked up the passionate Marvel movie fanbase. Well, he was right that many fans were certainly passionate, but not in a good way. Although many fans were skeptical at first, the majority of people love Ruffalo's rendition of Bruce Banner. We even love Ruffalo himself, even though he's made it his personal mission to spoil every single upcoming Marvel movie for us. Getting typecast can be a problem in Hollywood, even when you're not hurting for work. There was a time when if you wanted an intimidating, quiet, and shirtless star in Hollywood, you called Jason Momoa. And that was Marvel's line of thinking when they tried to get him to play Drax the Destroyer in Guardians of the Galaxy. But apparently, Momoa was eager to take on roles where he might actually get to, talk, so he passed on the project. So, Marvel ended up casting wrestler Dave Bautista as Drax the Destroyer, and fans felt all kinds of ways about a professional wrestler becoming an actor. Apparently, they also didn't consider that in addition to doing all kinds of crazy stunts, acting is a very important component of pro wrestling. Not only is Bautista an amazing Drax, but how many people could sit still for 5 hours to get their prosthetics and makeup added? Oh, did we say sit because we meant stand? Because that boy had to stand still with his arms outstretched, and co-star Chris Pratt says he's never heard him complain once. By now, he's gotten his makeup routine to just under 3 hours, and it's hard for fans to imagine anyone else taking on the role of Drax. In the comic books, Drax the Destroyer is actually green, but his character got a color change for the big screen and nobody seemed to really care about it. Unfortunately, they didn't have the same reaction when Marvel had the absolute audacity to cast actor Idris Elba as Heimdall, who is described in Norse mythology as the whitest of the gods. Yes, in a movie about magical superpowered beings and enchanted hammers, having a non-white Heimdall was apparently way too unbelievable for some people. Some people believed casting Elba as Heimdall would just make Thor way too unrealistic. Honestly, that's kind of the statement that's so out there it's hard to counter because of how much can you really argue with that kind of crazy. Somehow, fans were able to look past the color of Elba's skin and suspend their disbelief enough to believe in an all-seeing Asgardian deity. Now, can we all talk about the truly offensive part of the first Thor movie? That stupid fake Infinity Gauntlet. Some heroes are so well known that it can create issues when the actor doesn't fit perfectly into people's preconceived notions. And then there are the Guardians of the Galaxy. Before the first movie came out, most people had never heard of them, and even their fans were forced to admit they weren't part of any major Marvel comic storylines. Still, when Chris Pratt was cast as Peter Quill, all kinds of people felt all kinds of ways about it. It's not that Pratt was a bad actor. In fact, he was a really good one. Maybe a bit too good, because we all couldn't help but equate him with the lovable doofus Andy Dwyer on Parks and Rec. Seriously, is it any wonder people were skeptical about the idea of this guy becoming a superhero? But as we all know, Pratt dropped a ton of weight and got into fighting shape to become Star-Lord and join the MCU. Even though many of us were furious with him for charging at Thanos like an idiot during Avengers Infinity War, we can't fault Pratt for being the perfect Star-Lord. While Star-Lord is a more recent big-screen hero, there have been many different versions of Batman over the years. And since the very beginning, people have been complaining about who studios have chosen to play Bruce Wayne. When Michael Keaton was cast as Batman in the movie of the same name, the studio received tens of thousands of angry letters complaining about it. As many as 50,000 furious fans took the time to write out their thoughts and mail them to the studio. Even before people could take to Twitter with their complaints, they were whining that Keaton was too much of a comedian to ever pull off The Dark Knight. Earlier, we talked about fans being skeptical of Tom Holland being able to portray Peter Parker on the big screen. But let's not forget that audiences complaining about Spider-Man while simultaneously being desperate to see Spider-Man is pretty much a tradition at this point. It's a real bunch of J. Jonah Jamesons out there is what we're trying to say here. People were really attached to the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and salty over the fact that the fourth one in that series never ended up happening. So they were pretty upset The Amazing Spider-Man was being made at all, and decided that being excited about it meant turning your back on Tobey Maguire, and who would ever do such a thing as that? And although Andrew Garfield ended up impressing audiences with his portrayal of this iconic hero, even he admits the pressure was a bit much. He claimed that the studio put such an emphasis on appealing to everyone under the sun that it affected the project they were trying to create. While he knows the studio was worried about their bottom line, Garfield admits he wasn't sad to say goodbye to the pressure of trying to please all the people all the time. Even the real Spider-Man couldn't do that. And Andrew Garfield was far from the only actor who had a problem with the way the Amazing Spider-Man movies worked out. Actor James Franco was a part of the original Sam Raimi trilogy as Harry Osborn, and he wanted everyone to know that he's not at all bitter about being replaced by Dane DeHaan. While he applauded DeHaan's performance, he called the movies themselves meh, and said they were too close to the existing Spider-Man movies. To be fair to Franco, that's a criticism echoed by many Spider-Man fans. And it turns out Franco wasn't the biggest fan of his own Spider-Man movies either. He once complained about a series of movies he worked on that he didn't really care for. And it definitely seemed like he was talking about the Spider-Man films. Although fans came to enjoy Franco's portrayal of Harry Osborn, there were many who thought he was a questionable casting decision at first. Now let's finally talk about Tobey Maguire, the man who set the bar for playing Spider-Man. Not only did this movie help bring superhero movies into the mainstream, but it proved that they can be extremely lucrative, ensuring that studios would keep on churning them out forever and ever and ever. Needless to say, this was before Disney started pumping out billion-dollar blockbusters and knocking James Cameron's Avatar off the top spot. Yeah, take that, you blue Pocahontas. Anyway, the film was a huge hit, but it was one few people expected. Who knew that the guy from the Cider House Rules could pull off being in a wacky comic book movie? Some angry comic book fans even accused him of dooming the franchise before it even started. But Maguire was up to the challenge and said he was confident he could change people's opinions of him. Casting director Mary Jo Slater even said that using a less well-known actor meant he brought less baggage to the role. Sure, there were some fans who felt we had already seen Maguire portraying a soulful, nerdy type, but clearly they underestimated his acting range. The Spider-Man movies were huge, and although we have our own favorite Spider-Man, the general consensus was that Maguire did an excellent job with the part. In fact, he was good enough to make us carefully scrutinize every Peter Parker who dared come after him. Tom Holland as Peter Parker is a tough casting choice to beat, but maybe we're just saying that because we very nearly lost having him in the MCU. Tell us which one of these actors was your favorite in the comments section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.